In 1923, a German father sent his son to buy a loaf of bread with a wheelbarrow full of cash. By the time the boy reached the bakery, the price had gone up again. He didn't stop walking, he ran, because in that moment, standing still cost him money. That story sounds extreme, almost unbelievable, but the force that destroyed that family's savings has a name you already know. It's called inflation, and it didn't disappear when the history books closed the chapter on Weimar Germany. It is active right now, in your bank account, moving so slowly you can't feel it, taking a little more of your money every single day. You know the thief's name. What you don't know is how it gets inside your house without ever touching your money. Because your dollars aren't disappearing, every single one of them is still there, and that's exactly what makes this so dangerous. Ask someone what's stealing their money and they'll usually say the same thing. Prices are going up. That's true, but knowing a thief's name isn't the same as understanding how it operates. Inflation doesn't break into your house. It doesn't need to. It works through something happening quietly inside your own head, a blind spot so common that most people carry it their entire lives without ever noticing. Here's the uncomfortable question nobody asks. If everyone knows prices rise over time, why does almost no one actually plan for it? Why do people keep cash in savings accounts earning less than the rate their money is losing value? Why does a raise feel like winning even when it isn't? The answer isn't ignorance, it's something stranger, something built into how the human brain processes numbers. Economists have a name for it. They call it the money illusion, and once you understand it, you'll never look at a paycheck the same way again. In 1928, an American economist named Irving Fisher published a book with a simple, unsettling premise. People don't think in real value. They think in the numbers printed in front of them. A dollar looks like a dollar whether it buys a candy bar or a car payment. The brain treats the number as the truth, not the purchasing power behind it. Fisher argued this single mental shortcut was responsible for entire financial crises. Businesses made decisions based on nominal profits that were actually losses in disguise. Workers celebrated raises that didn't keep pace with the cost of living. Investors mistook rising numbers on a statement for rising wealth. For decades, his idea was treated as a footnote. Then, in 1997, two behavioral economists decided to test it directly. Here's a claim that sounds impossible. A person can get a raise at work and still end that year poorer than when it started. Not feel poorer, actually mathematically poorer. It sounds like a trick. It isn't. And in 1997, researchers proved most people can't see it happening even when it's explained to them directly. Eldar Shafir and Peter Diamond, working with psychologist Amos Tversky, ran a study that asked ordinary people a simple question. Imagine two people. One gets a 2% raise during a year when prices rise 4%. The other gets a 2% pay cut during a year when prices don't move at all. Mathematically, both people end up in the exact same position. Their real purchasing power drops by roughly 2%. But when researchers asked participants which person was happier, which person made the better decision, which person was treated more fairly, the answers weren't close. People overwhelmingly said the person who got the raise did better, even though in real terms they didn't. That single result exposed something unsettling about the human mind handling money. We don't evaluate wealth, we evaluate the number on the page, and the number on the page can lie to us for years without us noticing. Weimar Germany's collapse happened in months. Prices doubled every few days. It was fast, brutal, and impossible to ignore. That's not how it usually works. That's not how it's working on you. Modern inflation doesn't run, it walks, a few percent a year, quietly compounding, so smoothly that your brain never registers it as loss. There's no wheelbarrow moment, no single day where the damage becomes visible. Instead, there's just a slow, permanent leak, and the money illusion is the reason you can't hear it dripping. Picture someone who locks $10,000 in cash inside a safe, convinced they found the one truly risk-free move. No market crash, no bank failure, no volatility, nothing that can go wrong. They close the door and forget about it for 30 years. When they finally open that safe, every bill is exactly where they left it, untouched, uncounted by anyone else. No thief ever broke in, no transaction ever took place. And yet, the money inside now buys a fraction of what it once could. 3 decades earlier, that amount might have covered a serious down payment on a home. Today, it barely stretches across a few months of rent. Nobody stole a single dollar. The bills never left the safe, but the purchasing power did, quietly, continuously, without ever asking permission. That's the version of the thief almost nobody sees coming. It doesn't take your money, it just makes your money worth less, one invisible year at a time. The account holder sees the same bills, the same total, the same sense of safety. The math tells a different story entirely. That gap between what the number shows and what it actually means, that gap is where the thief lives. America learned this lesson once already, and mostly forgot it. Through the 1970s, wages in the United States kept climbing. On paper, workers were earning more nearly every year. Union contracts celebrated the increases, paychecks looked bigger, but prices were climbing faster. Oil shocks, supply disruptions, and years of loose monetary policy pushed inflation into double digits. By the end of the decade, many American households discovered something disorienting. They were working the same hours, earning bigger numbers, and somehow affording less than they had years earlier. Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker eventually broke the cycle by raising interest rates dramatically, triggering a painful recession to force inflation back down. It worked, but it took years, and it cost millions of people their jobs to fix a problem most of them never fully understood while it was happening to them. They weren't reckless, they weren't uninformed by the standards of their time. They were, like almost everyone, reading the wrong number. You'd think, given how well documented this is, people would have adapted by now. They haven't, and there's a reason. The brain evolved to make fast judgments with limited information. Comparing a bigger number to a smaller number is fast. Calculating real purchasing power adjusted for inflation across years of price changes is slow and effortful. So the brain takes the shortcut, every time. This is why a $5,000 raise feels like an unambiguous win, even in a year when the cost of rent, groceries, and everything else rose enough to erase most of it. This is why people feel wealthier when the stock market shows big round numbers without adjusting for what those numbers actually represent. This is why a 2% hike at the grocery store barely registers as news, while a 2% stock market drop feels like a headline. The thief doesn't need to hide, it just needs your brain to keep taking the shortcut. If the money illusion only affected people struggling to make ends meet, it would be a smaller story. It doesn't work that way. It reaches people earning 6 figures, 7 figures, people who should, by any reasonable measure, feel financially secure. Financial counselors and bankruptcy researchers have documented the same pattern for years. Household income rises and spending rises with it, almost exactly in step. A raise arrives, and within months, a larger home, a newer car, or a higher grocery bill has absorbed it entirely. The bigger number on the pay stub creates a feeling of new freedom. The brain sees the increase and assumes there's room to spend more, without pausing to ask whether prices, taxes, and lifestyle costs absorbed the gain before it ever became real wealth. This isn't a story about irresponsible people, it's a story about a mental shortcut that doesn't care how much you earn. A surgeon earning triple what she earned 2 decades ago can still feel financially stretched because her sense of more is anchored to a number, not to what that number actually buys after inflation and lifestyle creep take their share. The thief doesn't check your income bracket before it starts working. Here's where it gets stranger, and this is the part almost nobody talks about. Inflation isn't actually the enemy on its own. Mild, steady inflation is a normal, even necessary feature of a functioning economy. It's not the existence of rising prices that quietly destroys people's finances. It's the mismatch between rising prices and where people choose to keep their money. Cash sitting idle loses to inflation, guaranteed year after year without exception. But money placed into assets that historically grow faster than inflation, productive businesses, real estate, diversified investments, doesn't just survive the thief, it can outrun it entirely. The wealthy families who preserved fortunes across generations didn't do it by hoarding cash. They did it by refusing to let their money sit still long enough for the illusion to catch up to them. The billionaire investor Warren Buffett has spent decades making versions of the same point. The biggest risk isn't market volatility, it's holding cash and assuming it's safe, while it quietly bleeds value every year you hold it. Safety, in other words, isn't about avoiding risk. It's about understanding which risk you're already taking, whether you notice it or not.
That's why the wealthiest households historically treat cash as a tool for short-term needs, never as a place to store long-term wealth. Every dollar left idle for decades quietly volunteers itself to the thief. Every dollar put to work fighting inflation stands a chance of outrunning it. The difference rarely feels dramatic in the moment. Nobody notices the day their savings account started losing the race. But compounded across 20 or 30 years, that quiet difference becomes the gap between a retirement spent comfortably and one spent anxiously recalculating what's left. So what does this actually mean for a normal person, not a historian studying Weimar Germany or a policymaker like Paul Volcker? It means the paycheck that feels generous this year might be quietly smaller than last year's, and you'd have no way of knowing unless you did the math yourself. It means that comfortable, cautious choice, keeping money exactly where it is, untouched, unchanged, is often the single riskiest decision available.
And it means the safe in that story, the one filled with $10,000 that never lost a bill, was never actually safe at all. Go back to that German father running toward the bakery before prices rose again. He could see his thief. It moved fast enough to watch, fast enough to fear, fast enough to force him into a full sprint down a Berlin street. You will probably never run from yours. It will never announce itself with a headline, a shortage, or a wheelbarrow. It will arrive instead as a bigger number on a pay stub, a savings balance that only ever seems to climb, a bank statement that looks, on its surface, like proof that everything is fine. That's what makes it more dangerous, not less. A threat you can see is a threat you can outrun. A threat that hides inside the very numbers built to reassure you is a threat most people never outrun, because they never learn they're in a race at all. The father in 1923 knew with total certainty that he was losing money in real time. Most people today die without ever knowing it happened to them at all. The question was never really about prices going up. It was always about whether you're measuring your life in numbers or in what those numbers can actually buy. One of those tells the truth. The other one is just very good at pretending to. If you found this perspective valuable, consider subscribing for more documentaries that uncover the hidden forces shaping how we think, spend, and build wealth. Here's the question worth sitting with. When you look at your own finances, are you tracking what you earn or what you can actually afford?